So the other night I was scrolling through shorts before bed. I've been really sick this week and just been trying to feel better. So I thought maybe some short form dopamine maxing would be great for me. But I came across this reel and I'm gonna put it up on the screen, and it's basically like one of these World War II stories. It's kind of cringe looking at the video and everything, but I think the underlying story and the thought provoking aspect of it had for me could be kind of interesting, and thought I'd share it with you guys. But story kind of is, from what you can see in the short, a B-17 bomber is basically like limping through the sky at this point. It's shot up, barely flying, the crew is wounded, the plane's full of holes, they're trying to get home, but they're deep in enemy territory. And a German fighter pilot finds them. Now in that moment, like, his job's pretty obvious, right? Shoot them down. That's the war, that's the system, that's what the machine wants from him. He sees an enemy plane, enemy crew, enemy target. But then when he gets close enough to actually see them, this is where the whole story changes, because they stop being a target and they become people, and he sees the humanity in them. He starts to see how destroyed the plane is. He sees that they're barely surviving. He sees that shooting them down at that point wouldn't really be combat. It would just be execution. So instead of killing them, he escorts them out of German airspace, and he does the unthinkable. He protects them, and then he flies away. And this is where it started to kind of hit me, because, yeah, it's based off a true story and everything. The reel is kind of cringe, or the short or whatever, but I kind of started to ask myself, why do stories like that always hit people so hard? Like, there's so many stories like that become books, documentaries, speeches, inspirational posts, and people just kind of pass them around forever. But the reason they hit so hard isn't really because they're rare, so to speak. It's because they kind of feel obvious, And that part was really messing me up, because when you hear a story like that, your reaction is not just, wow, that guy was a hero. It's more kind of like, wait, why is that exceptional, That seems like the right thing to do. Why does recognizing another human being as a human feel like an insane act of courage? Why does basic mercy feel like a miracle? And I think the answer to that is because almost every system we live in teaches us to stop seeing people directly. War turns people into targets. Jobs turn people into headcount. Dating apps turn people into options. Social media turns people into content. Politics turns people into the other side. Customer service turns people into tickets. School turns people into scores. Corporate life turns people into resources. And the messed up part is, I get why we do that. That's what makes it so hard. Because I don't think the answer is just like, stop categorizing people. Like, that sounds nice, but it's not realistic, We kind of need categories to make the world work. Like, a hospital needs patient charts, a school needs grades, companies need roles, an airline needs boarding groups, a country needs laws, an army needs commands, business needs spreadsheets, websites need users, a calendar needs time blocks. Without systems, everything becomes chaos. You can't run a city on vibes. You can't manage thousands of people by saying, everyone is a beautiful, unique soul, so we're just going to freestyle payroll this week. Like, no, obviously not. Systems exist because life gets too big for one human brain. We have to simplify. We have to label. We sort. We rank. We measure. We turn messy reality into something that we can manage. And I don't think that's automatically evil. The problem is when the shortcut becomes the truth. The problem is when employee number 4,832 stops being a person with a life and becomes only a labor cost. The problem is when customer support ticket 719 stops being a person having a real issue and becomes a metric ruining someone's average handle time. The problem is when a dating app stops being an actual human being with fears and hopes and dreams with a whole childhood and just becomes another face you swipe past while half watching TV. The problem is when a political disagreement turns someone into the enemy before they even open their mouth. The problem is when a school tells a kid, you're a 72, that's a C-, and nobody asks what's happening at home. And the problem is when social media turns every human moment into a performance. Because then eventually you're not living around people anymore, you're living around labels. And labels are easier to mistreat. And that's scary. It's very hard to be cruel to a person when you're actually seeing them, but it's much easier to be crueler to a category. Nobody wants to destroy a family, but people can destroy the enemy. Nobody wants to ruin someone's life, but companies can cut headcount. Nobody wants to dehumanize lonely people, but apps can optimize user engagement. Nobody wants to make children feel worthless, but schools can sort low performers. Nobody wants to treat workers like machines, but corporations can maximize resources. The language does half the violence before anyone even notices, because once you change the word, you change the feeling. A person sounds scared, a resource sounds usable. A civilian sounds innocent, collateral damage sounds like a spreadsheet cell. A kid sounds alive, a test core sounds sortable. A lonely guy sounds human, a user sounds monetizable. And the craziest thing is that we all know this. We know this instinctively, and that's why those little human moments hit so hard. It's because somebody broke character. When someone refuses to play their assigned role. When someone looks at the enemy and sees a scared kid. When a boss actually treats an employee like they have a life outside of work. When a stranger helps someone and gets nothing out of it. When someone online says, "Hey, I disagree with you, but I get where you're coming from." When a teacher notices the kid falling behind isn't lazy, he's drowning. When a customer service worker actually cares even though the system is designed to make them numb. Those moments feel weirdly emotional because they remind us of something we forgot. That this is what we are. This is what we're supposed to be. I think that's why people are so obsessed with these stories. It's not because they restore faith in humanity. It's because they expose how little humanity is built into normal life. That's the uncomfortable part. A German fighter pilot sparing an enemy bomber crew in World War II feels more human than half the emails these people receive at work. And I think that should bother us. Because modern life is full of fake politeness and real dehumanization. Hope this email finds you well. Then underneath it is the most soulless request you've ever seen in your life. Just circling back, translation is, "I'm hunting you." Per my last email. Translation, "I hate you professionally." We appreciate your patience. Translation, "No one is coming to save you. Your call is important to us." No, it's not. You are currently number 48 in the listening line of royalty-free jazz played through a microwave. Everything has this glossy customer service voice over it now. Everything sounds polite, everything says the right thing, but so much of it feels dead. Because the words are human-shaped, but there's no human in them. And honestly, that might be the thing people are reacting to now when they say the world feels fake. It's not just technology or social media or work. It's that the more and more of life feels like interacting with systems pretending to be people. Automated emails, algorithmic feeds, HR language, dating profiles, brand accounts, political talking points, customer service scripts, corporate wellness seminars. Everything is communicating, but nothing is connecting. And then one real human moment cuts through all of it, like a pilot sparing another pilot, a stranger checking in, a friend saying the thing they're not supposed to say, a person choosing mercy when the system gave them permission not to. That's why it lands. Because for a second, the machinery stops, and you can see the person underneath. But then the hard question is, okay, so now what do we do with that? Because like I said, we can't just destroy every system. We can't run the world with no categories. We can't pretend scale doesn't exist. If you have 10 people, you can know everyone personally. If you have 10,000 people, you need structure. If you have 10 million people, you need systems. So maybe the answer isn't to get rid of the labels. Maybe the answer is to remember they're temporary. A label is supposed to help you navigate reality. It's not supposed to replace reality. An employee is just a role. It's not a soul. Customer is a relationship. It's not a species. Student is a position. It's not a value judgment. User is a data point. It's not a person. Enemy might describe the situation, but it does not erase the human being inside it. That's the line. That's the line we keep crossing. The system says this is what they are to us, but humanity says this is not all they are. And I think that's what the German pilot saw that day. The world told him that is the enemy bomber, but his eyes told him those are men trying to get home. And for one moment, he trusted his eyes more than the system. That's the whole thing. That's what this whole video is about. Trust your eyes more than the label, because labels are useful until they make you blind. And once they make you blind, they become dangerous. This happens everywhere. At work, it's easy to see someone as the annoying guy who won't answer your email, but maybe he's carrying more than you know. In traffic, it's easy to see someone as an idiot in a Nissan Altima trying to ruin your life personally. And to be fair, sometimes it is a Nissan Altima trying to ruin your life personally, but still, maybe that person is late to something that actually matters. Online, it's easy to see someone as an NPC with the worst opinion you've ever read, but maybe they're 15. Maybe they're lonely. Maybe they were raised around completely different information than you. Maybe they're just having a bad day and are posting like an absolute goblin. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everyone. It doesn't mean every single person gets infinite patience. It doesn't mean there aren't bad people. There are. Some people are dangerous. Some people abuse mercy. Some people will take your empathy and use it as an unlocked door. So this isn't some Disney Channel everyone is good deep down message. That's not what I'm saying. Boundaries still matter, consequences still matter, systems still matter. But there is a difference between protecting yourself and dehumanizing everyone. There is a difference between saying this person did something wrong and saying this person is no longer a person. And that distinction matters. Because once you give yourself permission to stop seeing someone as human, you can justify almost anything. And that's the oldest trick in history. Every awful thing humans have ever done to each other started with a story about how those people are not really like us. Oh, they're animals, they're criminals, they're degenerates, they're NPCs, they're sheep, they're parasites, they're the problem. Pick your century, pick your ideology, pick your conflict. It's always the same spell with different words. Make the person into a thing, then do whatever you want to the thing. And that's why the opposite is so powerful. To look at someone you're allowed to hate and say, no, I still see you. That's one of the most rebellious things a person can do. It's not soft or weak, it's rebellious. Because the system wants efficiency. The system wants obedience. The system wants categories. The system wants you to move fast enough that you don't have time to notice the person bleeding inside the label. And sometimes being a human being means slowing down long enough just to notice. That's why these moments haunt us, because they ask something from us. They don't just make us feel good. They kind of accuse us a little bit. They make you look at your own life and ask, where am I doing this? Who have I turned into a category because it made my life easier? Who have I dismissed as annoying, stupid, useless, cringe, lazy, dramatic, toxic, poor, rich, liberal, conservative, corporate, homeless, influencer, boomer, Gen Z, whatever it is? Who did I stop seeing clearly? And again, you can't live with your heart fully open every second. You would get destroyed. You can't absorb every tragedy, every stranger, every sad story, every injustice, every person's pain. Your brain would melt. So it protects you, it simplifies, it filters, and it gives you shortcuts. But maybe the goal isn't to never use shortcuts. Maybe the goal is to know when the shortcut is making you less human. That's the difference. A category can be useful, but when the category makes cruelty feel normal, something has gone wrong. When the efficiency matters more than dignity, something's gone wrong. When the system works but everyone inside it feels dead, something's gone wrong. When people are technically connected but emotionally starving, something's gone wrong. And I think everyone feels this now. Even if we don't have the words for it, people feel processed, they feel sorted, they feel watched, they feel measured, they feel optimized. They feel like they're performing, being alive instead of actually being alive. At work, you're your productivity. Online, you're your engagement. On dating apps, you are your photos. In school, you are your grades. In the economy, you are your spending power. And in politics, you are your demographic. Everywhere you go, some system is trying to reduce you into the part of you it can't use. And maybe that's why people are so desperate for real moments. Why a conversation with a stranger can stay with you for years. Why a random act of kindness can make you feel emotional. Why a good friend visiting can make life feel real again. Why old photos hurt. Why certain songs feel like proof you're still alive. Why a story from World War II can make someone sit there for decades and just say, damn. Maybe people are still people. Maybe that's what we're looking for all the time. Not perfection, not world peace, not some giant utopian answer. Just proof. Proof that the human part didn't die. Proof that there is still something underneath all the roles, under the job title, under the username, under the politics, under the uniform, under the social mask, under the algorithm, under the grind, and under the fake professional voice. There's still a person trying to get home. And maybe that's the simplest way to say it. Everybody's trying to get home. Not literally, but emotionally. Everyone is trying to get somewhere safe. Somewhere where they're understood, somewhere where they don't have to perform, somewhere where they're not a metric, somewhere where they're not content, somewhere where they're not a problem trying to be solved, somewhere where they're not trying to be a resource that needs to be used, somewhere where they're not a target. And when someone recognizes that, even for a second, it feels holy. Because it is. That's the part of humanity worth protecting. Not the systems, not the labels, not the rankings, not the institutions, the actual human being underneath. So yeah, we probably do need systems. We need structure, we need roles, we need organization. We need ways to handle scale. But we also need reminders that no system is more real than the people inside it. The spreadsheet is not more real than the worker. The score is not more real than the kid. The profile is not more real than the person. The uniform is not more real than the body wearing it. The target is not more real than the man inside the plane. And maybe that's the point. Being a human is not complicated. It's just inconvenient. And it slows things down. It messes with clean categories. It makes the easy harder to answer. And it makes the enemy harder to hate. It makes the worker harder to exploit. And it makes the stranger harder to ignore. It makes the content look like a person again. And maybe that's why we avoid it. Because if we fully saw each other all the time, we'd have to change how we live. We'd have to change how we work, we talk, we date, we scroll, we argue, we build companies, how we treat the people below us, and how we treat the people above us, how we treat those who we can do nothing for us. And that's a lot harder than posting a quote about humanity and going back to business as usual. Because maybe it starts small. Maybe it starts with noticing when your language is making someone else less real. Maybe it starts with catching yourself before you turn someone into a punchline. Maybe it starts with remembering that every annoying person in your day has an entire life you will never see. Maybe it starts with refusing to become completely numb. Because numbness is easy. Numbness is efficient. Numbness scales. Humanity does not scale as easily. And that's why it matters. Because every once in a while, someone has to interrupt the machine. Someone has to look at the target and see a person. Someone has to look at the ticket and hear a voice. Someone has to look at the employee and see a life. Someone has to look at the stranger and think, that's a person. Not just a role, not just a label, not just a problem. That's somebody. And maybe that doesn't fix the world, but maybe it doesn't tear down the systems. Maybe it doesn't solve the impossible problem of how to organize billions of people without reducing them. But it does something. It keeps the human part alive. And honestly, that might be the whole fight. Not becoming perfect, not becoming saintly, not loving everybody all the time. Just refusing to get what people are. Because the second we forget that, everything gets easier. And worse. So maybe those rare human moments matter so much because they remind us of the obvious things we keep designing our lives to ignore. People are people, even when the world has thousands of reasons to call them something else.